Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Hello, I am Shannon Sclafani, head of the Michigan District Council of the Urban Land Institute. On behalf of ULI, I'd like to welcome you to this virtual meeting and express how much we all hope you're well and safe during this unprecedented time. I hope that this call goes smoothly, but also hope that you will forgive us any hiccups that may occur as we learn how to use this technology in a more expanded capacity than we have before. We've already set the default for all of you to be muted for the majority of this meeting, and we ask that you also disable your video for the duration of the presentation in order to ensure that we have proper bandwidth. This meeting's presentation is being recorded, and we will share the presentation on our website soon after. In just a few moments, I will turn it over to our speakers to start, but wanted to share the format of this meeting to ensure that we can maximize everyone's time. Victoria will be monitoring the chat for questions that you may have throughout the presentations, and we've reserved the last third of this meeting for a robust question and answer session with our speakers and with each other. Please allow Victoria to call on you to unmute and ask your question during that time. Now, I'd like to read a statement from ULI's Global CEO, Ed Walter. The past several months have been challenging and disorienting for all of us due to COVID-19. And now, with the senseless killing of George Floyd, we are witnessing protests across many cities, at times violent, as frustrated citizens seek to be heard. In the midst of this turmoil, ULI recognizes the importance of our mission now more than ever, to provide leadership in the responsible use of land and in creating and sustaining thriving communities worldwide. At the heart of this mission is a belief that our communities can only truly thrive if they are built on the foundations of diversity, inclusivity, and social equity. In short, our communities must work for everyone. Times of crisis demand great leadership, and ULI's 45,000 members are at the forefront of shaping the built environment and have an important role to play in designing and building places in ways that help tackle rather than perpetuate the inequalities in our society. We will continue to support our members to share best practices, learn from each other's mistakes, and partner with our cities in a sincere and coordinated effort to make progress on this critical objective. Our members, often industry leaders in each of their communities across our nation, can and should play a significant role in bringing about the change needed in our cities. We recognize the scale of inequality in our country and how great a task stands before us. We remain firmly committed to working across the real estate industry to help bring about the change needed in our communities. With that, I will turn it over to the co-chair of our district council, Jill Ferrari.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are so glad that you took the time to join us today in our newest installment of our Here to Help series. Our goal during this time is to keep our members as connected and informed as possible. So we're very glad that you could be with us here today. One announcement we'd like to make, ULI Michigan has been a proud partner and supporter of the Capital Impact Partners Equitable Development Initiative, led by the extraordinary Elizabeth Luther. The cohort graduated this week, and the phone call, the webinar, celebrating that graduation was attended by, over 100 people. It was very exciting to see. And I'd like to congratulate the winning development competition team, Stephen Harris, Adina Hill, Hafsa Khan, and Marcus Wilson. Congratulations to you and everyone who was involved in that cohort. We'd like to let you know about a few events that are coming up over the next few months. As I said, we are continuing our Here to Help series, trying to provide timely information on the world of sustainable land use. June 10th, we have our Women's Leadership Initiative Build Up Breakfast. The week of June 29th, we have our next Here to Help webinar series on capital stacks, where they're at, what we're seeing across different industries. In July, we'll be looking at what the new normal is, workplace, culture, everything that we're going to be looking at in the future. And in August, we're going to cover issues related to industrial and opportunities in Southeast Michigan and beyond. And with that, I will turn it back to Shannon Sclafani to introduce our speakers for today. Today, we're going to be talking about development and what we're seeing across different industry sectors, what's happening and what we're looking at in the near future.
Thanks so much, Jill. Today we have moderating and leading the discussion, Sarah Pavelko. Sarah is the Director of Real Estate and Financial Services at the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, the co-chair of our Programs Committee and a longtime ULI member. Darren McCluskey is a broker and owner at DeVono Real Estate, established in 2015. DeNovo is a Detroit-centric brokerage firm. Darren has been a member of ULI since he was about 19 years old, and we're thrilled to have him here with us today, also an alumni of our Larson Center for Leadership. Mike Ferlito is a partner of the Ferlito Group and co-founder of Bamboo Detroit. He focuses on RED and investment in Southeast Michigan. Mike is also an alumni of our Larson Center for Leadership, as is Sarah Pavelko, I should mention. And Cliff Brown is an urban developer with operations in the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic. He is the managing partner of Woodbourne Partners and also an alumni of our Larson Center for Leadership. So welcome. I'll hand it off to Sarah to start the conversation.
Thanks, Shannon. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm very excited to talk a little bit more with this panel about how the current COVID health crisis has impacted their current work, as well as how they're planning for the future on this. I'd like to start out with introductions of each of our panelists, as well as if they can provide us a very brief context of the type of development, their focus, so that as they provide answers to the discussion questions, you can have a better context for the work space that we work in. So I'm going to go ahead and just introduce myself first. For those of you who don't know, the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation is the city's economic development agency. We focus in 3 areas: small business, business attraction development services, and there's actually a 4th one that I forgot, our boards and government affairs, which is the alphabet soups of the world. So that relate to financing with real estate. So DBRA, the DDA, those EDC, those types of authorities. I sit in the real estate and financial services that looks at the implementation of our real estate projects, both on the construction of public infrastructure, as well as structuring real estate deals and moving incentives through to make deals happen. I would now like to work through each one of our panelists. I'm going to start with Darren.
Am I supposed to introduce myself? Okay.
Yes, if you could.
I'm the owner and broker at DeNovo Real Estate. I own a couple other investment-related companies, including Detroit DeNovo, and then I'm partners of 2 other companies, Detroit Neighborhood Partners and Uptown Detroit Associates. I'm also working part-time with Loveland Technologies. They have an awesome product called LandGrid that anyone in the investment space and property acquisition space should be looking at. My brokerage has kind of bifurcated into 2 regions, 2 different areas. One is kind of your traditional residential boutique brokerage, and then the other is real estate consultant work for larger organizations, nonprofits, and even the Catholic Church to some degree. I'm mostly specializing in finding off-market properties. I kind of made my mark in either saving or purchasing properties before they go to tax auction in the North End, and then expanded from there. My undergrad is in civil engineering, master's in environmental engineering, took a lot of urban planning courses. There's some people from my former company, Soil and Materials Engineers, who I saw were on the call. So hi, everybody. I am a member of the Saline Historic District Commission, a small town that I live in out towards Ann Arbor, ULI, and the Detroit Athletic Club. I've been busy renovating a 1860s home that is almost net zero, and I have a 1-year-old child who just started walking.
Thank you, Darren. I'm gonna go next to Mike Ferlito.
Congratulations, Darren. How's everyone doing? My name is Michael Ferlito. I am a partner of Ferlito Group and a co-founder of Bamboo Detroit. Ferlito Group, my dad started in 1980, has been developing, managing, investing, and building in Southeast Michigan since 1980. Focusing on properties, single-family homes to multifamily in downtown core. Lately, we've been focusing on single-family housing, condos, multifamily, self-storage, and co-working, and we're doing an industrial deal right now. My background is really, I started in the business in 2010, focusing on single-family back then, moving downtown in 2017, but my business interest was down here since 2010, my father since 1980, so we've been down here for a very long time. Started, our largest project down here is probably the Cals building in 2006. Bamboo is a co-working space, was the first co-working space in the CBD. We started that in 2013. We have about 25,000 square feet under management. And breaking ground on our second location in downtown Royal Oak next week. My background is education, went to Northwood for undergrad and Wayne State for my master's in finance. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass it on to Cliff.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Cliff Brown, managing partner of Woodbourne Partners. We are a family of companies, which includes Woodbourne Partners, which is our development arm and our holding arm, Woodbourne Property Management, which handles all property management for our properties, and Woodbourne Capital, which is our fundraising arm. We do primarily mixed use, mixed income, multifamily development, as well as we're starting to move in the for sale space, as well as identifying value add opportunities. We have been in operations downtown Detroit since 2009, working on the Scotta Brush Park as well as the Co at West Village. We currently have 5 projects going in the city of Detroit and are looking at projects in Washington, D.C. as well as Chicago. And I'm a proud graduate of the Ohio State University, both undergraduate and graduate, and love to throw that in the face of all you Michiganders. But I am a very big proponent of the city of Detroit and want to do whatever I can to help it to succeed and grow.
All right, well, thank you, Off. I'm going to kick it off with the first question. I think that there's been a lot of discussion around some immediate response to how businesses and real estate property owners have had to respond with the shelter in place, and how it's in particular around rents or debt relief, and as well as issues with tenants and tenants' ability to pay. But I do want to take some time to talk through with you, if you could share with the group something that has really stood out to you that's really impacted how you do business in the last several months as a result of the shelter in place, and how you've responded to that to mitigate or address that issue. I can pick someone to go first, or if someone wants to volunteer.
I can start. So primarily from a brokerage perspective, right, things were just completely shut down for a good 6 weeks. Like in-person showings just were not a thing. We, early in the year and into the fall of last year, really bought all the equipment for 3D Matterport tours and things like that. So as soon as things opened back up, we were able to go virtual with almost everything. And one real basic thing is just pre-screening people, setting the bar a little higher before tenants enter properties, before potential buyers, even going as far as having them fill out applications, reviewing the property virtually, and then showing them the property. It's helped out a lot.
This is Cliff. For us, it has really slowed down our ability to turn units. So above and beyond just showing units, our ability for when this first started and everything was kind of stood in place, it made it very difficult for us to get people in to fix up units that people were moving out of, as well as clean those units. And then on the development side, the real challenge is that you have cities and municipalities and states all pouring their money into COVID, which absolutely makes sense. But it creates a challenge in terms of financing deals. And so it's really putting a crunch on financing deals. And, this thing, I don't think it's going to remain flat. It's either going to cause construction costs to go down, which is highly unlikely, or potentially could cause construction costs to go up if we have skilled trades who have gone to other cities and other states to work while we were shut down.
That is the biggest fear in our business as well as construction costs. Focusing more on the development side, not only did when municipalities shut down, it just halted all development in terms of what our access was to them, but it actually, for us, it created a theoretical pause, being like, wait a minute, we have all these deals in the pipeline, but is the market going to absorb all these deals post-COVID? Is there a recession coming, a real recession, not just this 2-quarter blimp? They say don't catch a falling knife. So for us, we took a pause, not only because we had to, but because we really wanted to mitigate our risk going into this. So there's actually 2 or 3 deals where we have paused indefinitely until we know what's going to be happening in the 3rd and 4th quarter. On the finance side, we had 3 refinances in the month of May that we were very blessed to execute, but that was only because they were already in the pipeline in March and February. But talking to those same lenders, they're all pulling back as well. I mean, Cliff could speak more to this on the Fannie and Freddie and the agency debt market, capital markets for multifamily. But if you're going into them right now with a new deal, the terms have changed, and it has not changed to the favor of the developer and the investor. So COVID has impact in the medium term, not only the short term for us.
Well, Mike, thanks. That your comments actually, I think, transition well to the next question I wanted to ask, which is, as you look to the future and you're working through your pre-development and your for projects, and you're looking at maybe even repositioning your current portfolio, different assets in that portfolio, how are you making changes in through your pre-development process, whether it's from your space needs for your current tenants and future tenants, how you evaluate projects you're looking at acquiring, or space planning?
So I'll just continue. For example, we were looking at an existing apartment building, a few apartment buildings with small units, a lot of amenities. The question is, post-COVID, are people going to need that? Are people going to want that, really? Are people going to need that? And then going to the co-working side of things, COVID has dramatically impacted co-working because the theme of work and the theme of life really was the sharing economy. And, sharing an office space with 100 people you don't really know kind of gives people a little, a pause on if they want to be doing that post-COVID. So through the co-working space, we had to, deep intensify the space, put the dividers in, have signage and stuff like that. So the co-working space we have now, there's not much we can actually change in the physicality of the space. The new space, we had to redesign some rooms for larger square feet for these rooms so people can have that 6 feet of distance. But for current real estate, right now, we hit complete pause buttons on all acquisitions with these current apartment buildings because maybe some people don't feel comfortable touching all these door handles and sharing HVAC with 100 people they don't know, in common areas. So there is, in our opinion, going to be definitely a short-term impact moving forward.
And then I'm seeing just in the residential market, more so in the suburbs, but a little bit in the city, people just wanting more space. They're willing to pay more of a premium to have an extra bedroom. I mean, it's the way of the world. It'll be interesting to see if employers give, work from home credit to people or something like that when they shift around their own commercial leases. But it's something that I'm seeing a lot of.
We're moving full speed ahead on the work that we were doing. I will say that the majority of calls that I've gotten recently have been for our large 2 bedrooms, which, it could just be because we're in the neighborhoods, but it has been nonstop, the number of calls that I've gotten on the 2 bedrooms that we have. And frankly, those are not cheap. Those are our most expensive units, but that's what people seem to want. But we're still moving full speed ahead. We think on the other side of this, people are still at some point going to come back to wanting studios and 1 bedrooms, and they're going to want common area space. We just have to be thoughtful about how we approach it.
Darren, I had a question. Am I coming through well?
We
Yeah.
got you.
Great.
Okay, sorry. I don't have great internet, man. But Darren, I wanted to actually ask a follow-up question to what you just talked about. There's been a lot of discussion that I've seen on in different spaces around the single-family housing market increasing in strength. And I'm curious, it's anecdotal, but from your perspective, how have you seen, in your role as a broker, have you started to see that?
So I expected, a really big pent up demand on both supply and demand. I mean, I just expected like the flood, it was like parting the Red Sea, right? Just massive amounts on both sides. And I expected there to be more motivated sellers than buyers. But what I'm seeing is less people wanting to list right now because of the uncertainty or just the actual like method of listing a home with COVID-19. And largely because of that, there's a supply shortage. It's causing like a blip or a spike. I don't know if it's something that it'll kind of go into a more sustained growth pattern, kind of as we were before, or if a bunch of buyers are going to start looking all at once and there's going to be a pullback. I really don't know yet. It's not what I expected at all. And I know that very high-end homes are selling a lot quicker, probably as a result of people caring more now than ever about exactly where they are, sometimes 90% of the time.
I'm curious to find out from each of you, as you've been looking at different opportunities, what is an unexpected opportunity or an unexpected positive outcome from this that you've experienced?
Do you want me to go?
Sure, Darren. Yeah, you said you had the good example.
So personally, just mostly with a lot of my work being a broker, it was a good time to regroup, organize, get systems in place for a new era that we're entering into, and it was helpful to an extent. I think in terms of perspective opportunity that there's going to be renewed focus on either strong clustered neighborhoods that have park space and kind of mixed use ability, or even a return of the small town America, because in a smaller community but still isolated from everything else, there's opportunity. And there's been a kind of drain of small town America in the metro area, like way out, south and north of Ann Arbor, for instance, that I see some opportunity in.
Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to mention. I think the industrial space. I think those of you guys that are in the industrial space, I think there's going to be a dramatic shift, even though it's already happening, a dramatic shift of onshoring our supply chain. Not just in the health sector, but all over. I mean, I talked to several individuals that have these manufacturing companies that can't get supplies from overseas because the supply chain just dried up when China shut down. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. I also have to agree with Darren. I think at least in the short and medium term, there is going to be a push toward more space, less density, and it's not just because of the COVID and people being surrounded by you. I think it's really going to be down to, these corporations from, having 100% of their workforce in an office to shifting to maybe 50% are in an office, 25% are in a flex space like Bamboo or WeWork, and 25% is work from home. And if you have less people working from home, people don't need to be driving, though, do not need to be proximity to their offices, proximity to their office. So they're gonna enjoy staying away from the city to be able to work from home. And that's where that extra bedroom comes in my opinion, so people have the opportunity to work from home. I think there's a big opportunity there.
I'm gonna disagree. I think it's gonna go completely the other direction. I think that people miss people. They miss being around people. I think there is some concern in terms of being in close proximity to people, but I think ultimately what we have seen is that for years people have moved out to the suburbs and they've been spread out, and people really want to be around other people. They want to be around activity. I also one of my hopes that comes out of this is the Metro Detroit area cannot continue to see an increase in construction costs and an increase in acquisition costs. And I'm hoping, that acquisition costs will be right-sized some, just because frankly, if you are not a highly efficient manager of your space right now or of your vacant land, you could be running into a situation where you're probably best served by letting it go a little bit cheaper than you originally expected.
I'd have to agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with Clifford. I think the suburbs are not where it's at. When I say small town, I mean on the edge of a town that has amenities. I don't mean, the mile by mile block where you have strip malls everywhere.
I agree with that too.
Yeah, driving through the suburbs has been interesting in the COVID era with everyone kind of stuck at home. And it's like, how far can you get with just having like chalk on the sidewalk and like, a pool in the front yard? It's you want the amenities around you, whether it's nature, trails, or whatnot. I think we always talk about live, work, play, but people now are thinking live, work, play, vacation. And if they can have it all in one, and it is an hour and a half drive to their corporate office, but they can still be out in a small town area and virtually commute. I think it's something that people are going to look towards.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If I had to rephrase, I didn't mean like Macomb Township and Shelby Township, which is so confusing for you, Darren, but the Royal Oaks, the Ferndales, the Plymouths, where they have vibrant life, but not large corporate offices where people have to be. I think those are going to be very hot markets in the next 12 months.
I do think we're going to see office space change. I think people are trying to get employees back in. I just wonder over the short term, when you start talking about people having to wear masks for 9 hours out of the day, how realistic that is. Yeah. I think people are going to ultimately just say, listen, it works pretty convenient to work from home. And as long as, most people, I worked in a corporate job, and of course I worked 100% of my time, but most of the people working big corporate jobs, you could argue that probably 75% or 25% of their time is wasted. And so it's probably no different at home. I still think that people are going to continue to flock downtown, just because I just think it is, people want to be in unique spaces, and they want to be in spaces that are frankly inimitable. And so, yes, you can go some places and you can get the river, but can you get all four sports teams? I think there are some unique advantages that the city of Detroit offers, frankly, downtown, that people are going to continue to crave and want to be around. That's not to say a mutually exclusive argument, and you're not going to have people who are going to say, listen, I want to be in small towns near city centers. I just think that also you're still going to have your urban metropolises that are going to remain very popular. Now, does that mean that there are going to be some older families who, let's say, are in New York or wherever and saying, like, listen, I'd rather just stay in my vacation home on a regular basis because I got more space? That's possible, but I think that for the most part, a certain sector of the population wants to be in an urban center.
So I will chime in just because Shannon tagged me. We are a development company that does rural development around the state. And just from our perspective, I will tell you that before COVID, there were numerous communities that reached out to us and let us know that they were in a position for employers to expand, but there was no housing available for them to support that growth. And we were in the process of developing a statewide workforce housing strategy. After COVID hit, things slowed down for a little bit, but in the last 30 days, we've received 4 term sheets from CRA lenders around the state on 4 different projects. So the LIHTC industry, LIHTC housing, mixed income housing with complex capital stacks, we're moving full speed ahead. I think that I don't disagree with Cliff. Love the downtown life, love urban areas, but I do think there's a lot of employment growth that's possible over the next few years in these rural towns.
Well, so thanks, Jill. And I think that that touches on actually a question that I wanted to ask from what Shannon posted in the comments. We've talked about where people are going to be looking and how I'm sure that this is what you believe, I'm sure is impacting where you're looking for your next development opportunities. And I know if we all had a crystal ball, we probably wouldn't share the information to this whole group. But would you guys mind sharing how it has impacted where you're looking for development opportunities and places to invest? And
So,
sorry,
go
really
ahead, go
quick.
ahead.
You know, next time I do a panel on Zoom, hopefully it doesn't happen too much more. I'm going to think about doing questions for the audience because it is a unique tool that we have. And I kind of want to, you guys have a little debate going on. I wish we could get, give a question to the audience and see where they land.
So what I will say just very quickly is so there was a phrase that we lived by when I was growing up that says "scare money, don't make money," and so I feel that way about my investments in the city of Detroit. I think that the people who have historically been uncomfortable and haven't been 2 feet in, they're going to jump out of the market. I think that they're going to go. People move towards what is comfortable for them, and for us. We feel like we have been very disciplined in our approach. We've taken the time to study the data, and we feel like we understand our markets. And so we're going to continue full speed ahead in the markets that we've identified, in the neighborhoods that we've identified, and in the cities that we've identified.
Yeah, I'll go next, but I still think we're in the eye of the storm. I know we are in the eye of the storm, and I think we're going to have a dramatic impact in employment in this medium term. And I think it's going to have direct impact on people's wallets. And I think that's going to have direct impact on where people want to live and amenities and where they can afford to live. And I still think that's going to impact not only the shock of COVID and the fear of health, but I just, you know, talking with people on the streets and just hearing what they're feeling about COVID and not COVID and what, you know, people don't know yet. And if we all had the silver ball or the crystal ball, sorry, we all wouldn't be sitting here to be in, in the South right now, but we just don't know. All I know is that COVID will have a permanent impact on development and real estate investment. And that answer has not been had yet, and we're not in the position to continue jumping with both feet first on these extraordinarily expensive downtown development projects with lack of gap funding, which is a whole nother issue that we can touch on with capital markets. And there's just a lot of fear that, in my opinion, the stock market has not at all embedded in that. I think there's going to be an issue in the next few months here. It's just, you just hear all the corporations, a lot of people are not hiring all these people back, and that's going to have a direct impact on wages. And it's time to be cautious, in my opinion.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
No, Darren, please go.
I was going to say, I was looking at a few tax credit deals, stepping in and buying some single family tax credit projects in Detroit. And like around the time that COVID hit, it pushed me over the edge. I'm like, this makes a lot of sense. I mean, people need a place to live, and having tenants that are fixed income. I mean, it sounds strange, but a lot of my tenants are just market rate, and they've become fixed income either on, unemployment with added benefits or just having their stimulus check come in. So figuring out ways to kind of diversify and then also weather a storm. I like the way that Mike put it. We're in the eye of the storm. Now's the time to kind of batten down the hatches and double check where you are, where you're over leveraged or extended, just in case. And then beyond that, it's like, who the heck knows what's going to happen in the fall? We have an election coming. That's a whole different level of uncertainty and a bunch of different dimensions.
So I don't disagree with any of that, but what I would say is that we still exist in a city that has been significantly underbuilt, and it's been underbuilt for an extremely long time. And so I don't think that there's opportunity for everybody to jump in and do development, but I think for people who truly believe and have their fundamentals solid, I think that there are opportunities to take strategic shots. I wouldn't take a buckshot approach, but I would take a sniper or a rifle approach and take a very cautious and careful approach. But we still believe in proceeding forward carefully, but proceeding forward.
I agree. And I just want to make one more comment on urban development and to close point on construction costs. I mean, all of us developed, a couple of us developed larger multifamily product, but right now it's $300,000 a door plus to develop a mixed use apartment building class A. That is an insanely high number when there is very, very little gap funding, maybe some brownfield to develop. And that is a lot of risk, especially those guys who just opened their large facilities before COVID. It's just the construction cost is plaguing the state of Michigan, I would say, the most when it comes to pulling us out of this COVID recession. So, and it just, there's so much risk there.
That's where we're holding hands and we're saying, yes, we are in complete agreement. I don't think the risk is as much COVID as it is construction costs. And it's not just construction costs, but it's construction costs and the lack of understanding, I think, generally in this area about the challenges that construction costs are causing.
Yes.
From a lack of support, from a gap funding to challenging of developer fees. I don't think that this market right now properly compensates developers for the risks that they take related to construction costs, related to the uncertainty. And frankly, I don't know if there's been enough focus paid to, we pay attention to construction costs going up and rents going up, but we haven't talked about the fact that incomes are not increasing at the level that they need to support the infrastructure challenges that we're facing. And to me, those are the things that give me pause. Those are the things that make me say, maybe I'm not 2 feet in, maybe I'm 1 foot in, right? But if it's just COVID, I think COVID is a real risk. It's a real concern. But I think ultimately people are going to be who they're going to be. But I think some of these other things are going to really be the challenge.
And the trillions of newly printed dollars are just hitting the market. So
couldn't agree more with what you said.
Well, it's almost like somebody gave you the questions to the test before you took the test. So think back. I speaking of financing, I think I wanted to wrap it up with just one last question to follow up on that. I couldn't agree with you more that we have very limited tools. It really makes our job difficult at DEGC. But I'm curious what you think would be detrimental if it went away, and what is missing. And because I want to leave time for questions, I'm going to ask you to leave it to like a very short, like couple word response to what would be detrimental if it went away and what is missing.
I'll leave it to Cliff on this one.
I'll start. I'm not typical at all. Most of my deals are small and cash. One thing that would be incredible is how many people have been to a park they didn't even know was around their house, right? In an era where we were talking dually about more dense development and then also more green space or open space for socially distancing, I'd love to see a focus on a green belt like Ann Arbor has. If someone wants some acreage and they want to develop it with a low impact single house and create more, spacing between towns and communities, I think there should be talk in a region about encouraging that.
I just think we've got to find a way to either get construction costs down or increase gap financing, and we have to protect developer fees. We have to compensate developers for the risk that they're taking and the time that they're putting in to get deals done.
And I would just add, they've already stripped most of the gap funding anyway, other than the brownfield and federal historic tax credit. I mean, bring back the state historic tax credit, bring back the MED funds that were pre-Snyder, that were actually gap equity funds and grants. Bring that stuff back. It's so expensive to build this stuff. And there's other municipalities all around the country, and you go to these conferences, counties, cities, they have all these programs. They're building these giant $500 million developments because they have huge stacks with people supporting them. We don't have that in the state of Michigan. And it's...
Last thing, I know we got to jump to questions, but I would just say, like, we play this game, right? When probably all of us that are on this call got into development, it was like, we got to get to $2 a square foot. We got to get to $2 a square foot. And then we get to $2 a square foot and we increase construction costs 30% year over year. And we say, let's take out the gap financing. What are we doing, right? I mean, do we really care about actually building a city that makes sense? I care as much as anybody else on this call about more affordable housing, but how do we build a city that has a middle-class basis if we can't afford to build housing for them, right? Heck, we can't afford to build housing for affordable housing, right? I mean, we can afford to do 2 affordable housing deals a year and give a huge developer fee, and that's it. And that is not a way to build a city.
And part of it's about preserving what's already there, because we're seeing, a population drop largely attributed to, a ring of neighborhoods in the city, and people are either coming downtown or they're going out to the burbs. So part of it's about saving the cost of the infrastructure and the bricks that are already there.
I like how you brought up, Mike, the tax credits. I think sometimes we think of there were problems with the programs before, but instead of just but all we did was get rid of them. And the benefit of a tax credit versus having a cash award every year to the MEDC is that our state, as it faces faces budget cuts, doesn't have to provide that immediate money up front. The private sector can cover it and syndicate that tax credit. And so I think that it's really something that should be considered and focused on as to go back to under some reforms, but to help make it that investment in the future of Michigan. I'd like to point out that you guys can, if you haven't been on a Zoom call, there's a little button at the bottom of your screen. There's a chat feature there, a little bubble. Just click on it, and you can write your questions in the Zoom group chat, and I will go through them and ask them. Right now, I'm seeing a lot of questions from our wonderful leader, Shannon. So I'm gonna. So please ask your questions there. Otherwise, I'm going to go through here and grab another. Sorry.
Sarah, I'm going to pop in real quick. I have the results to share from the poll, and I'm just going to launch those real quick.
Oh, great.
I wish you could vote for 2 instead of 1.
Couldn't sit on the fence on this one, Darren. You had to choose. It looks like urban growth was by 50%. Interesting.
Just figured out how to do the polls, Darren. Give us credit for that.
Yeah, thank you guys for responding on the fly so quickly. So there is one question that came up. Would you either personally or as a business be willing to pay higher taxes to access more of the grants and capital you are discussing? And what would be the most effective way in your mind to boost those funds?
It depends on where the tax is. Is it property tax, income tax?
Who pays it?
On the property tax side, I mean, we've all done NEZs, Oprahs, and the commercial rehab. I mean, we are literally paying well below what we should be paying on these new projects. I mean, we should be paying 50% of, the 87 mills, and we're paying 25%. So we would gladly pay, I know this, most developers would gladly pay a higher tax rate for those services to become more abundant. There's no question.
And
so I would say,
if I can just provide clarity, I'm not sure everyone here knows how tax abatements work, but Mike, I really appreciate that point. I've said this for a long time. Our tax abatements are needed because our millages are high, but it's a blunt force tool. It's like an all or nothing.
Yep.
And there's no scaling in that of what can this project actually afford to pay. And I think that you bring up a really good item in under property tax reform that could help raise budgets for municipalities, but also and fix some of those revenue gaps. Thank you.
So I would go a little bit of the opposite direction. I would be willing to pay more. I'd be willing to pay more in income tax. But I think from a property tax perspective, again, and I'm being specific to the city of Detroit, property taxes are already so high that deals just frankly just do not work. So, you know, to Mike's point, maybe if there's some kind of trade-off and you get more money on the front end, maybe people can afford to take on a little more, have a little less money to service their debt and their equity. But the challenge is that, and this is a completely separate conversation, at least in the city of Detroit, we have to right-size property taxes because
100%.
Property taxes are not reasonable. And so what really needs to happen is we need to decrease the number of people paying taxes by bringing more people into the city and decrease the amount of taxes per person that is paid. But I'm
about as laissez-faire economically as you can get, and about as libertarian as you can get. And what I see is all these externalities of unbridled suburban growth for decades, right? And all it does is shift a tax burden to the city and then the opportunity to the suburbs. So there needs to be a right sizing that happens. There needs to develop in the traditional, at least lately traditional suburban way, there should be costs associated with that. More costs.
There is a question here that I like to read out. How long is too long for the uncertainty cycle for your business? How long until there could be permanent damage for your investment and development?
I'll take this one real quick. One of many things my father has taught me is it is much harder to get out of a deal than into a deal. So pausing for us is just risk mitigation. If we lose a deal, there will always be a next one. We literally got rid of a 90-unit deal 2 months ago, and I was very upset about it because I was chasing it for a very long time. And, you know, I just told myself there will always be a next deal. So we won't know. We don't know. The market's at 26,000 or 25,000. I mean, it does not make any sense at all. I don't. The real question is, I don't think anyone.
I had a question. We talked a lot about construction costs. Do you see any, have you seen any good proposals out there on how we can mitigate or lower those construction costs, whether it's programs to attract skilled trade workers back to Michigan? And I want to say outside of direct grants and loans and gap financing, but more policy issues or platforms that the collective industry could work on, whether that's public or private.
It really doesn't make sense because if you think about our construction costs compared to other cities that are around us, you would think that you would have contractors pouring into the city and subcontractors pouring into the city. And there's something inefficient about this market that allows construction costs to stay high, but not new entrants to come in the market to offset those costs, right? In a healthy market, you would think you'd have new entrants that would ultimately start to drive some of those costs down, and you're not seeing it. So I'm not sure what is, I don't know if it's the fact that, you know, the big three pay more for their skilled trades and that starts to flow to other people. I don't know. You know, we've often heard people say that it's more difficult to do deals in the city of Detroit. And so that artificially inflates costs. I think there's some work that we could potentially do there. But that said, like anybody who's worked with the building safety and engineering department knows how phenomenal James and David Bell's group is. And so I think it's really starting to understand, well, what exactly do we mean by there's inefficiencies in this market and how do we get those inefficiencies out? But ultimately, I don't understand why those costs aren't being driven down.
Well, I know in Detroit, if you mow grass, you're supposed to get a license to do that. And then dually, now we're fighting with hiring people who are making more at home. So, I mean, that's gonna flow through. If you have a framer who can make more on unemployment at home with added coronavirus pay, it's just gonna have to work its way out the system eventually.
It's definitely a labor issue, and you have to remember Detroit's not special in this development boom. It's happening and happening a lot harder in every other municipality in the country. I mean, you go to Nashville, there's 80 cranes in the air. You go to Detroit, there's
But
one.
they're not seeing those construction costs, and so doesn't make sense. Everybody, you go to Columbus, Ohio, construction boom. Minneapolis, Nashville. You go to these places that are. I mean, you can't really compare us to Chicago or New York or Los Angeles, but you say Columbus or Indianapolis or some of these Minneapolis, with all the construction that they're seeing, why is their construction cost less than ours? That's what nobody can explain to me.
There is a question here about social unrest, and I mean, just again, I'm small scale, maintenance people from the city and the suburbs and everything, and there's a higher chance that you're going to get broken into with your truck sitting out front of a Detroit property than elsewhere. It does make me wonder if social unrest is going to pull into that in terms of the cost of doing business safely in the city.
So what I meant by that, Cliff, is nobody's going to be leaving their other cities to come to Detroit to build because they're already so busy in those other municipalities. And I really do think there is a huge labor shortage from the last recession. Automotives setting the bar for our rates, and then just complexity in doing deals here. I mean, it's $3,700 for a right-of-way permit to tap for a house. It's insane. So
that's a fair point. What doesn't make sense, you're right from a volume perspective, but what doesn't make sense purely from a labor and a skilled trade perspective is, hey, you're super busy in the other cities, but you can make a lot more money here potentially. Why is it not happening, right?
Do you think there's more risk in the city? Do you think there's just more risk from the fact that Detroit got so low in the last recession compared to some other cities?
I think that's a narrative. I don't think that it's reality. I do think that there are some challenges to doing work in the city of Detroit, but I don't think they're any different from the cost to do business in Chicago or in Columbus or anywhere else, right? I mean, and the fact of the matter is, the more density, the more eyes and boots that you have on the ground, the less risk there is.
I agree.
And I think in terms of the question on social unrest, I think it makes people nervous, and I think anytime you make people nervous, it hampers capital markets or development. But I think in general, what you're finding is that people are really looking, like, for example, if you look at the majority of municipalities around the state of Michigan, and particularly around Metro Detroit, for the most part, you have unrest, but it's largely peaceful. And you have people who are largely working with the police. Like, I don't hear very often people that are angry at the Detroit Police Department. And so I think that there's less risk there, and it's no different than anything else with Detroit. It's just about us properly telling our story and our narrative.
To wrap up for the last question, we've heard a lot in other emerging trends discussions at ULI and at conferences about how we're going to start to see investment moving out of the top tier cities to the cities that haven't been as top of mind for investments. And I think there's a lot of hope that Detroit will kind of come up in that. And COVID, it's yet to be seen how COVID affects the top tier cities. Does it make people want to pull their money and leave and find new opportunities? So when you reflect back on hearing those types of trend predictions, and you think now under the current COVID crisis, if you could just say a couple sentences on why you think Detroit, Metro Detroit, maybe Southeast Michigan, so we don't get the urban-rural debate, why you think that this region offers a fantastic opportunity for that outside investment to find a home here.
I think living costs are much lower here than the coastal cities, and I think the migration from coastal cities and super high rent has been happening for a couple of years now, and COVID has accelerated that. And I think the Midwestern belt, the Southwestern belt, places where people can more affordably live, is going to be not a boom, but I think an increase in demand.
Agreed.
Okay. I guess I see Southeast Michigan largely because it's been shuffling itself. I mean, we haven't really grown in 30 years or so, 40 years in Southeast Michigan. we've just kind of shuffled people around in different living situations. We have a unique opportunity of underdeveloped sites that could use a lot more density, that has the built-in infrastructure already there, combined with a great overlay, a patchwork of metro parks and things like that, that people are enjoying more now than ever under coronavirus.
Great. Well, I do want to be mindful of people's time, and I don't see any other questions in the chat. So I think we can wrap up, Shannon, if you want to wrap us up.
I wanted to just give one word question to the last three speakers. 12 months from now, what is your sort of outlook on development? Optimistic, cautiously optimistic, cautious, trepidatious? Give me your 12-month outlook.
Mine's holding where I am, like the mid-range rental market, and diversifying into some literally morbid realms of real estate. And I think we're going to go back to growth. I think it's going to be paused for a while.
For me, it's efficiency. I think it is a function of being extremely efficient and extremely smart, and being a surgeon. I mean, it's going to take proper preparation and really thinking through how to approach it. But I don't think it is a full-scale retreat. It's just about being smarter about how we move forward.
One word is optimistic, but to Cliff's very good point, take the shotgun away, hit the sniper rifle, be extremely efficient and specific on what you want to develop in the next 12 to 24 months and what the need is going to be. Because there's going to be a new need or a different shift in what people thought their need was to what it is now. And I'll leave this point. I do think Class B housing is extremely underserved and very hard to do. If someone can figure out that formula, it's a home run.
And just real quickly, I will say this, that because it's going to be such a challenge to actually get stuff built because of the lack of gap funding and the construction costs, it creates a high barrier to entry, which allows for the things that are actually built, they're going to just be gangbusters because it's going to be impossible. It's impossible to get anything built. So if you can get something built, people are going to go crazy for it.
Yeah, new construction, I think, is going to be a huge demand.
Right. Well, thank you so much to Sarah, Mike, Darren, and Cliff. I think this was a wonderful conversation. We are so appreciative of you taking the time and sharing your talent and your sort of foresight and thoughts with us. Please join us in 2 weeks. We will be having a more pointed conversation about trends in the real estate and capital markets that will give us a little bit more of more precise answers on some of those financing questions that we very lightly touched on today. So I hope that you'll join us in 2 weeks. Until then, everyone, please stay safe and well, and I really appreciate you all joining us today.
Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Bye.